My name is Ian McNaughton. If you're watching the video portion of this, you'll see that I just got a haircut done earlier today. I'm recording this Tuesday, December 8th. It's about noon hour here in Vancouver, British Columbia, where it is absolutely soaked. It is wet wet and even more wet. Today we got a good show coming up. We're going to talk about the F1 race, and we're going to discuss the rugby matches that happened this week, and we'll give a kind of a superlative type Jimmy Fallon type beat superlative segment thing, whatever you want to call it. I know that sounds really professional. I'm really professional. Look at me. I got a haircut. I look like I know what I'm talking about. Now I just got to shave my peach fuzz underneath my chin here, and I'll look even better. We're going to talk about the Sakhir Grand Prix that just happened on Sunday. Sergio Perez took home his first Formula One win. He spun out on a first lap. Charles Leclerc bumped him on the first lap. He pushed him all the way back to last place. Perez worked his way up into first by the end of the race. Um, he was being chased by George Russell, who we'll get into later on. Perez was being chased by him near the end of the race, but a tire punctured Russell's tires on lap 78, forced him to pit, all but securing Perez's win. And Perez is the first Mexican to win an F1 race since 1970, and this was Racing Point, which is Perez's team. It was their first win since 2003 when they were known as Jordan, and Giancarlo Fisichella won the 2003 Brazilian Grand Prix, which is a long time. That's 17 years since this team. They've just gone through a whole whack of owners, name changes, you name it. But finally, 17 years later, they get an F1 win. Finishing behind Sergio Perez was Frenchman Esteban Ocon. Excuse me. Ocon finished second. He was about 10 seconds behind Perez. This is Ocon's first podium finish in the F1. He's finished no higher than fifth in any other race in his career. And it's also Renault, Ocon's team. It's their third podium of the year, with Daniel Ricciardo finishing third at the Nürburgring and Imola. So Ocon himself started 11th. He worked his way up to second. He passed by Perez on lap 57, which is a really this was a really great race overall. I'd say this is probably the best race that we've seen in 2020. Um, just with all the storylines coming in, all the action that we saw in the race, it was incredible. And then finishing third was Canadian Lance Stroll. This is his third finish of his career. His third place finish this season after the race in Monza back in August. I want to say August. He started 10th. Stroll started 10th. He was one spot ahead of Ocon. But after pitting on lap 44, Stroll got ahead of Ocon out of the pits. They battled for a bit, and then Ocon passed Stroll on turn 5. It was a really interesting circuit as well, considering they were racing in Bahrain, and Bahrain's actually just in itself a really fun course. You got really good turns, got a little bit of elevation, not a lot. You do have some long straightaways. Normal times Bahrain is a really good race, and then this week they went on the outer circuit, which was kind of like a tri-oval a little bit. It's about the closest we'll see to like a NASCAR race out of F1. There was a bit of a chicane on turn 7, I believe it was. Turn 6 into turn 7, and then turn 8, where a lot of the Mercedes kind of went out of the line, where they were going off track a little bit. Was basically just after another chicane, and yeah, it was a wonderful circuit. I hope they do it again at some point. I don't know if they'll replace. I don't think they would replace the regular Bahrain Grand Prix with this outer circuit, but nevertheless, the two Racing Points got first and third. Renault got second, and it's the first time I can find in the history of the Racing Point teams, that's going back to Jordan, Force India, etc., that multiple drivers have had multiple podium finishes in a season for this team. So it's been a really good year for Racing Point. They're currently third in the Constructors' Championship. Basically, Mercedes and Red Bull have the top two spots locked up, and there's a battle for third going on between Racing Point, Renault, McLaren. Ferrari's in it a little bit, but Ferrari it really has to have a lot of luck, I think, if they're going to get the third place spot. So it's really between Racing Point, Renault, and McLaren. So really, really good weekend for Perez. Really good weekend for Lance Stroll. Good for Ocon. The guy that a lot of people were talking about after this weekend was George Russell. He's regularly a Williams driver. He was called on to replace Lewis Hamilton, who missed this weekend because of COVID. And George Russell is probably eventually, I would think, going to get the Mercedes spot. Whether that happens 2022, maybe even sooner, who knows? Um, Russell finished ninth, so he got 3 points technically because he got the 1 point for the fastest lap because he went on to soft tires at lap 78, I believe it was, whenever he got the last puncture. Russell started second. He passed Bottas on the inside on turn one in the very first lap, and he was building quite a bit of a lead before Leclerc crashed Perez and then Verstappen got in the way. We'll talk about that in a bit. Um, by lap 20, George Russell had a 2-second lead on Bottas, like a significant lead over the second place driver. The TSN turning point really came in lap 63. If you don't know what the TSN turning point is, TSN is the Canadian network where I am, and they usually have a big turning point of the event that caused some sort of confusion or chaos that changed the entire perspective. And that was on lap 68 in this, or 63, excuse me, in this race when Jack Aitken, who replaced Russell for Williams. So Jack Aitken was running the Williams car this weekend. He ran into the wall and lost his front wing on the very last turn, right before the pit lane at Bahrain. So Russell went in pit to get new tires because it's a safety car. Typically, you get a free stop, not a free stop, but you lose less time if you pit under a safety car compared to just pitting normally. So Russell went in to get new tires. However, due to a failure in the communication system, the radio wasn't working. There was some confusion as to what to do with Russell's car and what tires would go on. Russell was fitted with tires that were meant for his teammate Valtteri Bottas, and that is illegal. You can't do that. So it created confusion, and it also slowed up Bottas, who was right behind Russell. They were trying to double stack, and it just was a whole chaotic scene. So it forced Russell to pit again to get proper tires, which at that point put Russell fifth. So Russell was leading the race, but he had the wrong tire, so he had to come in and pit again. Uh, he's now in fifth spot. He's behind Bottas, who's in fourth, due to all this confusion and chaos. Russell worked his way up all the way to second place. Him and Perez were battling pretty close with about 10 laps left to go. And then obviously Russell got his tire puncture and he had to come into pit again. It dropped him all the way down to about 12th, I think it was, 12th or 13th, and he had to work his way back up into 10th because he got soft tires. So he got the fastest tires that you can have. And he just went through everybody. Like that was arguably one of the best pieces of races this entire uh, best piece of racing this entire race was watching Russell just go through the pack and work his way up into 10th. I think he finished ninth. Um, yeah, he finished ninth. So he secured the extra point for the fastest lap, which he got pretty soon after, like the first or second lap when he got the soft tires put on. So Russell finished ninth. His Mercedes teammate, Valtteri Bottas, finished eighth after he started with pole position. I think he was outpaced by Russell the entire race. Russell was again 2 seconds ahead of Bottas by the time lap 20 comes. Russell just looked much better than Bottas. Bottas was struggling. Bottas has struggled for the last I don't know how many weeks here, but the lap 63 pit stop where they tried to double stack and Russell's pit stop took forever, and then they put the wrong tires on Bottas's car. Then they took those tires off and they put on the old hard tires that he was driving with anyways. Um, it's not his fault. It's not Bottas's fault at all. It's just unfortunate because he's caught up in the middle of all this. Like this has nothing to do with Bottas. He's just the one who's caught up in the middle of it for like the third or fourth weekend, in as many weeks. Um, there's definitely some tension, I think, right now between Bottas and Mercedes. You can see it on social media. You can see it in the interviews with Bottas. It's not a great place right now with Bottas and Mercedes. The relationship is a bit questionable. Again, Bottas is under contract for next year with Mercedes. I was saying 2 weeks ago, I'm wondering when they're gonna do like trades, or when they're gonna North Americanize it, where Mercedes just trades Bottas in cash to Williams for George Russell, because George Russell looked tremendous all race weekend. I thought he was great. Bottas, I thought, had a really good weekend as well. He just didn't have as good a pace on Sunday compared to the rest of the weekend. Fun fact: Valtteri Bottas has not finished higher than 8th in his last 3 races. That's not good enough at Mercedes. When Mercedes has clearly the best car, they won the constructors championship by a mile. Bottas is, I think, the second driver on the drivers championship. I'm pretty sure he's second. Like, he's driving the best car, and he is a good driver. He is a really good driver. You know, I spoke about this last week. Turkey, there was some bad luck in Turkey. He had really poor restarts in the first race in Bahrain. I I I want to say it's just bad luck, because I think he's a better driver than what we've seen these last 3 races. But it's really tough when it's consecutive and when it's happening time after time again. He only has 2 wins this year, and that speaks also to how good Lewis Hamilton is. Because Bottas won, I believe, the very first race in Austria he won, and he won when they went to Russia. He hasn't won in his last 6 races. Again, Lewis Hamilton's really good. I don't know if there was really an opportunity for Bottas to win this past weekend on the outer circuit, but he just needs to be better. This upcoming weekend, they're racing in Abu Dhabi at Yas Marina this upcoming weekend. This is a really critical race for Bottas. He needs momentum heading into the winter training, and for the most part, it's going to be the same car, I think, going into next year. I don't think they're doing the major changes until 2022, but I'll have to take a look at that again. It's for the most part going to be the same car. They might make a few tweaks. There's not a whole lot that Mercedes needs to do to improve their car. Anyways, I don't think they've been improving. Like, I think they've basically just let the car drive as it is for the last, I don't know how many races. So again, I said this last week as well. Keep in mind how well Bottas does in the final race of the year. If he struggles, that's going to be an off-season note with Bottas and Mercedes. I want to talk about McLaren a little bit. They had a tough race. Carlos Sainz, I think I think he mentioned he had some wing issues early on. His wing wasn't deploying properly, so that left him struggling a little bit. Lando Norris was required to start from the back due to exceeding quota of power elements. I think they kind of knew that, and this was probably a race that McLaren didn't mind having Lando start from the back. Obviously, you don't want your driver starting from the back all the time, but this was one race I think they, get away with it. Sainz finished 4th. Lando Norris finished 9th. But they dropped a spot in the Constructors' Championship. So they're now 4th due to just because of how well Racing Point performed this past weekend. So kind of an interesting, race for McLaren. I think they'll perform a bit better in Yas Marina. They're better on the turns and the slower turns that Yas Marina has, especially in the last part of the lap. So I would think McLaren will improve this upcoming weekend. Other takeaways: the Verstappen Leclerc crash. Originally, I saw that and I thought that was a racing incident. It's still a bit of a racing incident because Leclerc, like, he's desperate. He needs to get inside, and that's what he did. So I don't necessarily blame Leclerc. He was responsible, but he was desperate, so it's a bit of a racing incident. Poor Max Verstappen. He deserved better. That was not his fault at all. He just couldn't break in time, and he tried to get out of the way, and he couldn't. He was stuck in no man's land, unfortunately, and That's why his race ended early. So you can bet that Max Verstappen will be pretty motivated headed into the final race weekend of the year in Yas Marina. Nicholas Latifi, he was the other driver for Williams this weekend. I don't see Latifi coming back. I mean, he probably will. He's under contract, but if maybe they can find somebody else. Latifi had an oil leak for Williams. Latifi has not been great this year. Very expendable. Again, if they could do the trades, I would think Latifi is someone that Williams would trade for somebody else if they could. Tough luck for Williams this weekend. You have Latifi, who has to basically retire early because of the oil leak. Jack Aiken was fine. He just had the front wing crash later on in the race. So, and again, they're all racing on a circuit they've never raced, a circuit that they've never raced on, this outer circuit before this weekend. So for your very first race, you can get a pass for Jack Aiken. Um, so Aiken was fine. Fittipaldi, he was racing for Haas. Pietro Fittipaldi. He actually, I think, Fittipaldi was third on driver of the day voting, which was interesting. I guess it's just people who like him, or they're just stuffing the ballot for a name they know, and this is his first time. I think he's going to be racing next. I don't think Grosjean is racing again this weekend, so Fittipaldi is going to get another shot with Haas. Just a shout out to those guys for their first F1 races. Hopefully, we'll see them in the near future. I would love to see that happen, but spots are really tough to come by, at least next year and possibly 2 years from now. That's the F1 portion of the race, of the podcast. We'll talk a bit more probably next week after the race in Yas Marina, see how that goes. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to discuss rugby, and I'll give my superlatives to the international teams as the season is over there. So thanks for listening. We'll be right back. Discussing rugby. This is, I'm going to call it Big E's International Rugby Superlatives for 2020. We're going to go through the top teams in the world by ranking for international men's rugby, and we're going to be discussing their superlatives, or what I would, say for the year should be their superlatives. It's kind of like the Jimmy Fallon thing where he does the most likely to such and such and such. I'm going to do that here for men's rugby nations and how their 2020 has gone. So we'll start with South Africa. Most likely to have enjoyed their vacation. I don't think they played any rugby matches this year. I'm just going to check just to confirm. But basically, they did not play in the Tri Nations this year. They were coming off the Rugby World Cup win back in, I think it was November last year. It was that long ago. So they've been off for over a year now, and so far, I think things have been going pretty good. They have to be happy with where they're at. They're still one of the best teams in the world. Everybody's a year older, but they're still a terrific team. Still rated the best in the world according to World Rugby. So they probably enjoyed their time off and will be excited when they can get back into playing in 2021. Number two, there's England. I said England is most likely to be voted the world's number one team, considering South Africa has been off. New Zealand did not have a great Tri Nations, or I mean, they won, but not a Tri Nations as good as one would expect New Zealand to have going up against Argentina and Australia. So I'd say England is most likely to be the world's number one ranked team. They haven't lost since, how long ago was that? They lost to, was it not France? They lost to somebody back in the Six Nations. But with that, England has had a really good fall, a really good autumn, considering they finally clinched their Six Nations championship by beating Italy. They had a really, really solid Autumn Nations Cup, which they beat France in, I think it was 25-22 or 22-19 on Sunday at Twickenham, with Owen Farrell getting the game-winning penalty in sudden death. So England is looking really good. England has been tremendous. For the last about year and a half, I would say England has been really good. So this team is probably gonna get. I would think they get ranked number one at some point. Um, depends on how South Africa does in 2021 and how well New Zealand performs as well. Number three on the rankings is New Zealand. I said New Zealand is most likely to win the 2023 Rugby World Cup because that's what a lot of these teams are just waiting for, preparing for, is the next World Cup. That's what they're building for, and I still think New Zealand has to be the favorite because they just have a plethora of talent. They're the All Blacks. They should be favored to win every time they have a World Cup. The Barrett brothers have been fantastic, uh, you know, with New Zealand. It'll be interesting to see how Bowden Barrett plays in Japan. That's going to be really fun to watch. He's going to go play for a Japanese club team. I'm really excited to see how that goes. So New Zealand, I think, is voted most likely to win the 2023 Rugby World Cup, even with the performance they had in this year's Tri Nations. Number four, France. France is most likely to have the best duo in the world. I say it every time I do a rugby podcast because I just can't not talk about these guys. Roman Niedermack, Antoine Dupont. They didn't play against England on Sunday, but those guys are fantastic. Just they play the 9 and the 10 terrific. They communicate extremely well. Uh, I'm really excited to see those guys hopefully perform together in 3 years' times in their home World Cup. That's going to be sensational to watch. They arguably have the best. I think it's my favorite duo in the world, anyways. Watching Niedermack and Dupont. So France is most likely to have the best duo in the world. But shout out to France. They've had a really good fall as well. They beat Ireland in the final game of their Six Nations, and then again a penalty, loss in sudden death to England without Dupont and Niedermack. No shame in that. That's about as good as a loss as you can have if you're France. Ireland most likely to usurp a top four spot because if you don't know what usurp is, it's just taking forcefully, really. Um, Ireland has been they've been a really good team. They're not quite in the top four level yet. I think they will get to a top four spot at some point between now and the next World Cup. They are doing terrific. Andy Farrell has the team playing really well. I'm really happy with Ireland, with Conor Murray, Jamie Stockdale, Johnny Sexton, 35 years old. He says he's going to try and play in the next World Cup at 38. I would love to see that happen. I can't say enough about Ireland. I'm really happy with how this team has performed uh, under the new coach. And considering that they were in Six Nations, grasp of winning it in the final day, can't say enough about the Ireland team. I cannot say enough about the Irish. Really excited for their 2021 Six Nations campaign. Australia. They're voted most likely to get better for 2023. They had about as expected, a fairly average Tri Nations. They have a new head coach as well. I'm just gonna pull up his name just to make sure that I have it correct. Yeah, Dave Rennie is the new head coach for Australia. Um, they're still building, they're still working. They're kind of in the same situation that Ireland and France is. I don't think they're as good as either one of those teams, but they're building, they're getting better, they're progressing, and they're probably most likely the team that's going to be better than where they are now in 3 years' times for the next World Cup. Scotland, they're voted most likely to have their coach fired. Or at least the next coach to be fired is Gregor Townsend. You know, Scotland has been a weird team in the last 13 months. I, I don't. That was a really tough loss against Ireland, where they kept it close, but they got blown out near the end. Um, this Six Nation. This Six Nations is another big Six Nations for Townsend. I said that kind of in the last Six Nations just because of this team missing out on the quarterfinals of the World Cup. This Six Nations, if they have really bad losses to England, to Ireland, France, even Wales, if they lose badly to Wales, I was surprised they beat Wales a little bit the last time they played them. But if they lose badly in all of those games, it's going to be really tough to, to ensure Townsend's position. The key is getting all of his guys healthy and playing together. Like Vin Russell was out for most of the year. You got to have Adam Hastings in there. Like those are really the two big guys. Adam Hastings and Finn Russell are the two guys you really want to see playing together. We'll see how the Six Nations goes. We'll see how Six Nations goes for Scotland. But if things don't go well, I'd say they're most likely to fire their next coach. Argentina, they're ranked 8th in the world. I'd say they're most likely to have peaked early. They had a really big win over the All Blacks, which the thing with Argentina is a very much a hot and cold team. They can play really well or they can play really bad. There's not really a middle ground I find with Argentina. They're either outperforming or underperforming. It's one or the other. I kind of want to say that they're gonna peak a bit early. I'm gonna say I think they peaked a bit early. We're going to see a high and low roller coaster almost with Argentina heading into the next World Cup. And who knows what we'll expect. I sure don't. They are going through a bit of a controversy with their captain, who Pablo Matera, who posted kind of some racist pro-Argentina stuff, got suspended and then came back. I don't know what to make with that. I'm going to say that Argentina goes on a bit of a slide heading into 2021. I would sell my Argentina stock if I had it. That's kind of my feeling on Argentina. Wales, number 9 in the world. Wales is most likely to still be where they are in 2023. I don't. Wales has some issues. Wales has a lot of problems that they need to fix and to get better at. And if they want to get back to where they were, they have to make some improvements. I don't know if that's firing P back. I don't know if that's just working together more. I'm not sure what the answer to fix Wales is. I wouldn't be the guy that you would really want to fix Wales. However, they have potential. There is a world in which Wales gets better and they become a top 5 team again. The issue is I just don't know if that's going to happen. With Alan Wynne Jones getting older every day, I don't know with Wales. If I had to guess, if I had to put money on it right now, I'd say they still be in the top 10, but closer to 9 than say 3 or 4. That's kind of my feeling on Wales. Fiji, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about with Fiji. I said they're most likely not to attract COVID again. They're going to go back home. There hasn't been many COVID cases in Fiji. I think there's almost been just as many cases within the Fiji team coming to Europe as there has been in the entire country. I don't see Fiji any better or any worse. They just didn't get the lion's share that they'd hoped for, which unfortunately, that's just the way life is. You can't really do a whole lot about it. They got a nice win against Georgia in the final weekend. You know, what can you say? There's not a lot else to say about Fiji. They didn't really show us a whole lot. I don't know much more about Fiji, now than I did before. So I just hope they don't get COVID again. If they're going back home, I doubt they're going to get COVID again. Some players obviously are going to go to their pro clubs, but for the most part, I think things will be a bit better overall for the international team. Speaking of Georgia, they're most likely to learn how to ruck and maul. That's been the biggest issue for Georgia this whole time coming over, playing their Autumn Nations games, including their kind of test match against their friendly against Scotland. They're going to get bigger. They're going to get stronger. That's how Georgia is. That's how they like to play. They just were underprepared and were not ready for the level of competition that we'd see. I think Georgia can only get better for here. I see them getting better, not worse. And part of that comes from being able to ruck better and to maul better. And I think we'll see that from Georgia in the next few years here coming into the next World Cup. That's my feeling on Georgia as a rugby nation. There's something there. There is something there with their players. They have the roster that's capable of being a possible top 10 team in the world, but they're still, they're still working on it. Italy, they're ranked 14th. So in case you're wondering, I skipped Japan at 10. We haven't seen the Brave Blossoms play this year. They got a busy 2021. I'll get into that in probably about a few weeks here. Previewing Japan and what to come in 2021. And then I also skipped Tonga at 13. So I'm going to go to Italy, who's ranked 14th in the world right now. I think they're most likely to make a surprise run in 2023. I think of all the teams that you see outside of the top 10, Fiji might, Georgia might, Samoa. I'm going to go with Italy. I'm going to say Italy is the team most likely to make a surprise run because, again, like Georgia, there's something there with Italy, but I think Italy has a better chance of improving in these 3 years and making a run. Italy every year is so fortunate to have 5 games against the top 5 teams in the world. That's guaranteed. That's happening. Top 10 teams, excuse me. I should have considered Wales not being in there and Scotland. But 5 games against the top 10 teams in the world. They're not going to win many. Probably aren't going to win a whole lot of games. But if they can learn, they can improve. They're really about 15 to 20% away from being up there with those guys. They they just need to be together. They need to work together. They need to learn. I love what the coaching staff is doing in Italy. All of them. There's something there, and I'm really excited with Italy. I have a bit of a soft spot with them. I don't know why, but maybe it's because I love Jake Pellegrini so much. Italy is going to go on a surprise run in 2023. That's my hot take. That's what I'm feeling with Italy. And again, it's like 15%. If they can learn, pass better, making tackle, like just 15% better, and this team has a chance to be a top 10 team in the world. No doubt about it. That's the rugby portion of today's pod. I hope you enjoyed the earlier section with the F1. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to have a Speak Your Piece podcast coming up late Tuesday night with Scott Conkin, SYP creator Scott. We'll probably have another Ian McNaughton show coming up here later on this week. Maybe we'll be talking some college sports. Maybe we'll be talking about the NFL. Yeah, this has been a really good pod. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. I really love when I get to discuss the F1 and the rugby. Two of my, now becoming my favorite topics to discuss and chat about. So thank you very much for listening. Go follow us on social media at Speak Your Piece on Instagram. We're on Twitter, Speak Your Piece 3, I think is our username. Just Speak Your Piece on Twitter. We're on YouTube. Go give us a like and a sub on YouTube. We're going to have some more content coming out there. So thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this and enjoy any other pods that we might have or enjoy a lot of our other content. Please tell your friends. This is still becoming something. So thank you very much for listening. Peace out.